Marina Collins never imagined that her quiet courtroom life would one day collide head-on with the unexpected. She had built her reputation as a fair and unyielding judge in the county, known for her clear mind and compassion coupled with a stubborn insistence on the truth. On an unusually crisp morning in early autumn, Marina strode into her chambers, not knowing that the case of the century was waiting on her docket, a case that would challenge every preconceived notion she had about power, deception, and justice in America. The world outside buzzed with the sound of falling leaves and the murmur of everyday life, but within the stone walls of the courthouse, destiny was about to make its entrance. Marina's day had started like any other, with a strong cup of black coffee and a review of her calendar. However, one case caught her eye, a civil dispute involving a seemingly straightforward contractual disagreement. The opposing counsel, a gentleman by the name of Samuel Price, had written to the court requesting a hearing. His reputation, at least from Marina's limited encounters with him, suggested he was a talented if conventional lawyer, modest in his demeanor and respectful in his presentation. As Marina flipped through his file, she could have never guessed that behind that familiar face lay someone with power far exceeding that of any regular attorney. As the courtroom filled with the rustle of papers and murmurs among the legal teams, Marina surveyed the proceedings from the bench with practiced calm. Today, however, had in store mysteries that would change her understanding of justice. Samuel Price strode into the courtroom with an aura of quiet authority that seemed to command respect from everyone present. Clad in a tailored navy suit and polished black shoes, he exuded not just competence but an unmistakable inner strength. Many attorneys prided themselves on a professional yet unassuming attitude, and Samuel seemed to have mastered that delicate balance to perfection. During his opening statement, Samuel carefully laid out the facts of the case, his words measured with precision. Yet as he spoke, Marina found herself noticing minute details that hinted at something more significant. His deep, resonant voice carried the cadence of an orator, and his carefully chosen phrases painted an image of a man who had seen more than his fair share of legal battles. His cross-references to constitutional precedents and historical cases were delivered with such authority that even Marina, who prided herself on knowing the law inside out, felt an inexplicable unsteadiness. Here was a man who defied simple categorization, a lawyer who was much more than he appeared. As the day wore on, numerous objections and subtle strategic maneuvers punctuated the proceedings. Samuel's arguments were sharp, his legal references precise. Marina's keen mind tasted the challenge of keeping up. Only later, in a quiet whisper shared between courthouse corridors and a hushed gavel's rhythm, did Marina begin to wonder, who was this Samuel Price truly? Rumor had long circulated in legal circles about mysterious figures rising from humble beginnings to occupy positions of immense influence behind the scenes. Could it be that Samuel was more than just another lawyer handpicked by fate? In a rare lull between testimonies, Marina recalled the many times rumors and whispered anecdotes had reached her ears about the state attorney general's discreet omnipresence in political and judicial affairs. Yet, despite these murmurs, she had never encountered evidence to support such claims directly. Now, with the courtroom filled with palpable anticipation, Marina felt an almost irresistible pull to dig deeper. With every argument, she sensed Samuel's true persona beginning to unravel like a tapestry of secrets long carefully woven. The turning point came unexpectedly during a recess, when Marina's curiosity compelled her to slip out to the courthouse library, a silent alcove of dusty legal tomes and past case files. There, she opened an old, battered file marked with the insignia of the state attorney general's office. The document detailed extensive matters of state interest, high-profile litigations, and covert investigations, all of which were signed by Samuel Price. The shock of the discovery sent a tremor through her steady frame. Could it be that the humble, unassuming lawyer was, in fact, the state attorney general? And if so, what intricate game was being played that brought him before her in a supposedly ordinary case? Caught between her duty to the law and her personal need to know the truth, Marina wrestled with her conscience. The sanctity of the courtroom and the impartiality expected of her role were paramount, yet the pull of curiosity was irresistible. That very day, following the hearing, Marina decided to confront Samuel privately. In the quiet corridors of the courthouse, away from the prying eyes of colleagues and legal onlookers, she arranged a meeting in one of the vacant judge's chambers. Samuel awaited her with a measured smile, his demeanor unchanged by the gravity of the court proceedings that had just transpired. As Marina entered the room with her usual dignified resolve, tinged with a personal trace of vulnerability, she addressed him by name. "Samuel, if I might be so bold, I have come across evidence that suggests your involvement in matters far greater than this case. Are you by chance," she paused, searching his eyes for clues, "the state attorney general?" For a long moment silence reigned between them, punctuated only by the rhythmic tapping of Marina's pen against the wooden desk. Samuel's smile broadened ever so slightly, and he leaned forward, hands clasped. "Judge Collins," he began in a calm, measured tone, "sometimes the person you think you are dealing with is only a facade. I understand your concern. The world of law, particularly in matters of public importance, is far more nuanced than many can imagine. It seems you have unearthed a detail I wish to keep under wraps." Marina's heart pounded in her chest as the room seemed to contract around the two of them. She demanded clarity, her voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline inside. "What do you mean by that, Samuel? How can a man of your stature claim to be handling a daily case only to reveal that you are, in fact, the state attorney general? And what is your purpose, really?" Samuel sighed, as if centuries of legal cases rested upon his shoulders. "My role, Judge Collins, is not one defined by ordinary measures. At times, our office must intervene in matters of state significance without alarming the public or compromising ongoing investigations. It is essential that certain legal battles maintain an air of normalcy, a small thread of predictability amidst the chaos. Today's case, though innocuous in appearance, masks a deeper battle against corruption infiltrating the highest tiers of our government. I have assumed the guise of a regular lawyer to ensure that this case proceeds without attracting undue attention." Marina felt both vindicated and unsettled. It was clear that Samuel's unassuming exterior was a mere front, a brilliant disguise to conceal a far more intricate and dangerous agenda. Although her initial shock was tempered by her determination to uphold justice, Marina could not help but question the legitimacy of hidden agendas in the judicial system. "So, the judgment you seek today is not solely for the benefit of the parties involved, but is a pawn in a larger game?" she inquired. Samuel nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting both regret and resolve. "In a sense, yes. There are forces at work that go far beyond this courtroom. I have to operate behind the scenes, ensuring that those who would abuse their power are held accountable. The case we observe today represents just one strand in a web of conspiracies that threatens the social and political fabric of our state. Every legal decision in this courtroom has ramifications far beyond the immediate parties. It is like a drop in a vast ocean, yet sometimes that drop can stir storms." The conversation deepened, with Samuel explaining how elements within the government sought to manipulate the law to serve their interests. His voice was low and measured as he recounted events that were too dangerous for the public to perceive. He spoke of secret meetings, hidden alliances, and the subtle exploitation of legal loopholes to avoid scrutiny. To Marina, the narrative felt like a well-scripted drama, one where the stakes were life and death for the integrity of state and justice alike. His allusions painted a picture of enemies lurking in the corridors of power, each with their own designs on the state's destiny. Marina's conscience roiled with conflicting emotions. Here she was, a bastion of the law, a judge sworn to uphold fairness and truth, now entangled in a reality where the lines between right and wrong blurred within the labyrinth of political ambition and covert operations. She wrestled with the idea that her courtroom might have become just another battlefield in a broader struggle, a struggle in which even her impartial judgment could be manipulated, or worse, used as a weapon against her own principles. After that fateful meeting, Marina found herself rattled yet resolute. Over the following weeks, as the case unfolded, she began noticing subtleties in each proceeding that suggested the infiltration of higher-level concerns. Witness testimonies took on double meanings, pieces of evidence were referenced with an urgency that belied their legal weight, and interactions between Samuel and his associates hinted at a covert kinship lurking behind the courtroom theatrics. Each day, Marina felt herself drawn deeper into the invisible nexus of state power and clandestine operations. Marina's interactions with Samuel evolved from guarded professional exchanges to more candid conversations that bore the weight of shared secrets. They began to discuss not only the day-to-day legal intricacies of the case at hand, but also the more expansive issues of corruption and the abuse of power. Marina, whose initial shock and trepidation were gradually replaced by a steely determination, demanded assurances that the pursuit of justice would remain untarnished by ulterior motives, even if such motives were necessary to serve the greater good. One rainy evening, after a particularly trying day in which the legal arguments veiled yet another subtle maneuver by those seeking to misappropriate power, Marina invited Samuel to a nearby cafe after the courthouse closed for the day. Away from the sterile atmosphere of the legal institution, the two exchanged thoughts amid the soft clink of porcelain cups and the gentle hum of a jazz record in the background. Marina confided in Samuel about her own suspicions that something was amiss with several high-ranking officials, including some whose names were usually spoken only in whispers among those in the know. Samuel listened intently, his expression grave as he considered her words. It was then that he admitted that the case today was merely the tip of a vast iceberg, one that extended far into the corridors of power. "I cannot reveal every detail," Samuel explained quietly, "but I will tell you this. Our democracy must always be safeguarded, even if that means undertaking actions that are uncomfortable or hidden from the public eye. Sometimes the pursuit of justice requires living in the shadows, using methods unorthodox to protect the true spirit of the law." Marina felt a shiver run down her spine at these words. Here was a man who believed that the ends might, in desperate situations, justify the means, a notion that clashed with her own fundamental belief in transparent accountability. Yet, as much as this disequilibrium unsettled her, she could not ignore the sincerity in Samuel's tone, nor the conviction in his eyes. In the following months, the case that had begun as a simple contractual dispute transformed into an epic trial that captured the attention of the legal community across the state. Behind the ordinary proceedings lurked a high-stakes struggle between entrenched corrupt politicians and a leadership driven by a desire to restore honor to governmental institutions. Marina now found herself in a position where every legal ruling not only affected the lives of the litigants but also carried significant political implications. The courthouse, once a sanctuary for impartial justice, had become a microcosm of the intense power struggles raging outside its venerable walls. The turning point in the trial came during an explosive session on a brisk winter morning. The courtroom was filled to capacity with reporters, legal experts, and local citizens drawn by the promise of revelations that could shake the very foundation of political legitimacy. Samuel, whose calm and measured presence had been unshaken throughout the trial, began his closing arguments by reciting legal precedents and constitutional principles with a clarity that resonated throughout the packed room. Yet, as he delved deeper into his argument, he started to expose layers of deception that had ensnared even the highest echelons of government. Samuel's words were like a carefully constructed tapestry. With each thread laid out, he began to reveal the hidden patterns of collusion between business interests and political agendas. He spoke of secret meetings held behind closed doors, of contracts rigged to siphon off public funds, and of influential figures who had used their clout to cover up misconduct. The evidence he presented was overwhelming, a series of documents, carefully verified testimonies, and legal anomalies that could no longer be ignored. Marina, despite her duty to remain neutral, felt a profound stirring of responsibility. The truth that Samuel was unveiling was not just relevant to the case before her, it was a clarion call to all who believed in honest governance. As Samuel reached the crescendo of his argument, a hush fell over the room. Even Marina, who had presided over many cases, found herself spellbound. He made it clear that the trial was not only about righting business wrongs, but also about restoring trust in the judicial process by holding powerful figures accountable. In that moment, Marina understood that the case had evolved into a watershed event, a trial that would be remembered long after the final gavel had fallen. The significance of the proceedings now transcended the boundaries of the courtroom. It touched on the very core of public trust, bridging the gap between law and the latent hopes of a community yearning for transparency and fairness. In the days that followed, the trial's momentum only grew stronger. Media outlets began to report extensively on the proceedings, and across town, whispers of governmental reform started to circulate. While many were initially skeptical of the extraordinary claims made in the courtroom, the accumulation of facts soon made it impossible to dismiss. The mayor of the city, a stout man known for his unyielding pragmatism, issued public statements promising thorough investigations into the allegations. Community leaders, emboldened by Samuel's steadfast determination, called for a re-examination of long-held practices that had, over time, sapped the integrity of public service. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Marina found that her alliance with Samuel had quietly shifted the dynamics of the trial. Other judges and lawyers, initially reticent to accept such radical claims, gradually recognized the weight of the evidence laid bare before them. Even members of the jury, who had been meticulously selected for their impartiality, began to exchange glances of acknowledgement as the facts unfolded. The trial was no longer just a legal procedure, it was a transformative journey for everyone involved, paving the way for deeper reflections on the role of justice in a modern society. For her part, Marina struggled with the legacy of her newfound understanding. Every decision she rendered in that courtroom was now imbued with a dual sense of duty, to abide by the letter of the law and to nurture the emerging spirit of accountability. In quieter moments, when the towering pillars of justice seemed cold and immutable, Marina found solace in her own moral conviction. She penned thoughtful reflections in her journal late at night, questioning the very nature of law and how it could be wielded to serve not only tradition but also the collective good of the people. The courtroom, once the realm of rigid procedures, had become a living testament to the evolving power of truth. Over the next chapter of events, evidence continued to surface that implicated some of the state's most influential figures. Through a combination of brilliant legal strategy and tireless investigative work, Samuel and his covert network brought forth witnesses who had previously been silenced by fear or coercion. One such witness was a former aide of a high-ranking state official, whose testimony shed crucial light on how public funds had been funneled into secret accounts and personal ventures. Each revelation not only fortified the case but also warmed the hearts of citizens who had long suspected that their leaders were corrupt to the core. The trial became a beacon, one that drew those who had endured years of systemic injustice and emboldened them to demand change. As the trial progressed, it became evident that the battle was not solely fought in the courtroom. Outside, on city streets and social media channels, a groundswell of public sentiment developed. Protesters marched, demanding accountability and reform. Community forums were established, inviting citizens to share their experiences and hopes for a better, fairer government. Marina, though technically confined to the judicial seat, felt a deep connection with those voices rallying for justice. The transformation was gradual yet irreversible, a paradigm shift in a society that had once taken for granted the integrity of its institutions. With each passing day, the trial's intensity reached new peaks. Samuel's closing arguments had resonated not only with the courtroom audience but with every citizen who was now watching closely. The trial was now the epicenter of a movement, an effort to reclaim a system that had grown too complacent and entwined with self-interest. For Marina, the culmination of these events was both exhilarating and terrifying. She was acutely aware that her decisions could set a powerful precedent, one that would ripple throughout legal, political, and social spheres for years to come. Inevitably, the day came when Marina was required to issue her verdict. The courtroom, now steeped in anticipation, held its collective breath. It was a moment heavy with the promise of change, as well as the suspicion that the outcome might force uncomfortable concessions to power. Marina's eyes scanned the courtroom, the anxious faces of the litigants, the determined expression on Samuel's face, and the solemnity of those who had dedicated their lives to upholding justice. This was not merely a legal decision, it was a defining moment in the history of the state. Taking a deep breath, Marina began her ruling with a measured tone that conveyed both clarity and gravitas. She spoke of the need to balance the scales of justice with an unwavering commitment to fairness. With each carefully chosen word, she recounted the evidence, the testimonies, and the legal precedents that had led to this turning point. As she articulated her final judgment, the gravity of the situation became evident. the verdict was a decisive blow to those who had long exploited the system for personal gain. When Marina concluded her ruling, the courtroom erupted into a mixture of gasps, applause, and sobbing relief. For some, it was a vindication decades in the making. For others, it was the end of a system that had been riddled with corruption and unchecked power. Samuel Price, now fully unmasked as the state attorney general, allowed a small, triumphant smile to break across his face as he accepted the outcome. In that instant, the silent understanding between him and Marina deepened. Their shared vision for a state governed by the true principles of justice had been vindicated. In the days and weeks that followed, the ramifications of Marina's judgment rippled outward. Behind closed doors, influential figures scrambled to stem the tide of reform, many of them now exposed as unsavory characters who had been operating behind the facade of legitimate governance. Investigations were opened, resignations followed, and slowly, the machinery of state power began to evolve along more transparent and moral lines. For the citizens, this was more than a legal victory. It was a reaffirmation that their collective voice could indeed spur meaningful change. Marina spent many long evenings reflecting on the journey that had led her to this point. In her private study, she pored over case notes, legal commentaries, and newspaper clippings chronicling the unfolding saga. She recognized that the decisions made during the trial were not isolated incidents. They were part of a larger, ongoing struggle to define what justice truly meant in an era where the lines between public service and personal ambition had blurred dangerously. Although the mantle of the state attorney general now rested in Samuel's hands, Marina resolved that the mantle of honest, courageous, and transparent justice would always be hers to safeguard through her work as a judge. In an emotional letter to a close friend, a fellow judge who had always championed the nobility of the legal system, Marina confessed that she felt as if a new chapter had opened in her life. "Today," she wrote, "I witnessed the raw power of truth triumph over the entangled deeds of those who would hide behind the walls of corruption. The future is uncertain, and there is much work to be done, but let this day be a reminder that the pursuit of justice is a duty we can never abandon, no matter how daunting the darkness may seem." Her words carried the weight of someone who had seen the corruption of power scrupulously dissected and replaced, if only in part, by an intrinsic commitment to the common good. Even as the state began to heal, Samuel continued to work behind the scenes with an almost spectral presence. Marina soon learned that his methods, though unorthodox, had laid the groundwork for a series of reforms that would redefine ethical standards in the government. Despite the diminishing public controversies, whispers abounded that many of his strategies were still in play: shadow negotiations, secret commissions, and clandestine meetings with reform-minded officials. Yet, through it all, Samuel maintained his steadfast belief in the cause. His resolve was mirrored in the grateful eyes of citizens and colleagues alike. The trial had served as a beacon of possibility, shining a light on the fact that even in a system steeped in greed and ambivalence, the truth could be coaxed forth by those resolute enough to seek it. In quiet, introspective moments, Marina would recall the fateful day when she had confronted Samuel in that private chamber. The memory of his calm admission, the measured explanation for the necessity of his guise, surged back as if he were still standing before her. That single conversation had irreversibly altered her perception of the legal system, a system that she had once thought to be solely guided by clear statutes and impartial ethics, but which now revealed itself to be layered and complex in ways she had never imagined. It was a lesson in the balance of power, the necessity of compromise, and the courage required to trust that the very heart of law could endure, even under immense pressure. Years later, when recounting the remarkable events that had taken place during that trial, Marina would speak not of the drama or the sensational twists, but of the human spirit that had driven all involved to persevere in the quest for truth. She remembered the faces of those who had risked everything to bring corruption to light, the quiet determination of everyday citizens, and the unyielding force of ethical convictions that proved, time and again, that justice was not an abstract ideal but a living, breathing creed. To Marina, Samuel's unexpected reveal was symbolic, a spark that ignited a fire of integrity in a society long plagued by the shadows of deceit. As the seasons passed, the echoes of that historic trial resounded in every facet of state life. Law enforcement agencies reformed their protocols, state legislatures debated new measures to ensure transparency, and educational institutions incorporated the lessons learned into their curricula on governance and ethics. For Marina, each morning when she stepped into her chambers, there was a profound sense that the walls of the courthouse were no longer just silent witnesses to the events of the day. They were monuments to a renewed commitment to the enduring values of justice, fairness, and accountability. Even the city itself, with its bustling streets and vibrant cultural life, seemed to pulse with a newfound energy as citizens embraced the hope that their voices could indeed change the course of history. In the twilight of her career, as Marina prepared to retire from the bench after decades of service, she often found herself pausing to reflect on that tumultuous period. The trial was forever etched in her mind. Its legacy would live on in the countless lives touched by its transformative power. A book was even written about the case, a collaborative narrative interweaving personal memoirs, courtroom transcripts, and detailed accounts of the reforms that followed. In many ways, Marina's journey, from a mere adjudicator of legal disputes to a guardian of the realm's moral compass, stood as a testament to the enduring truth that even in the labyrinthine corridors of power, the light of justice could prevail. On her final day on the bench, as colleagues, jurists, and dignitaries gathered to pay tribute to her many years of service, Marina addressed the assembly with quiet dignity. "The law," she said softly, "is not an instrument wielded by the powerful to oppress the weak. It is, at its heart, a mechanism for ensuring that every voice is heard, that every claim is subject to scrutiny, and that truth, no matter how deeply buried, will eventually see the light of day. Today, let us honor that truth and continue to fight for a world where justice transcends politics and prejudice." There was no need for further embellishment. The room resonated with a profound understanding that Marina's words would shape the future of the legal system for generations to come. In the years that followed her retirement, Marina continued to be revered as a champion of the people, a symbol of hope and integrity in an era where cynicism too often obscured the potential for transformation. The legacy of that landmark trial endured in legal history, a reminder that sometimes, behind the ordinary facade of a courtroom battle, lay the extraordinary truth of a man who could alter the destiny of an entire state with nothing more than his unwavering commitment to justice. And for Marina Collins, it had been a privilege to witness history being made, to see the struggle for truth unfold in all its complexity, and to know that in the end, courage and conviction would always find their way forward. Thus concludes the remarkable saga of a trial that began with the misconception of dealing with a regular lawyer and evolved into a crusade for ethical governance, a story of unexpected revelations, personal redemption, and an unyielding quest for justice. The courtroom, like the very soul of the state, had been cleansed in a moment of profound clarity, reminding all that even in a world rife with deception, the integrity of truth would always win through. And as the sun dipped below the horizon on that fateful day, one could almost hear the hushed whisper of history bearing witness to the birth of a new era in law, one where the relentless pursuit of justice, embodied by both Marina and Samuel, shone as a beacon for the myriad souls lost in the dark maze of power. In a final twist that neither time nor circumstance could erase, Samuel Price, having completed his mission as the state attorney general, quietly stepped away from the harsh spotlight of public acclaim. His departure was as unobtrusive as his arrival, leaving behind a legacy of unwavering integrity that would inspire countless future guardians of the law. The transformation he had initiated spread like ripples across the state, emboldening reformers and activists who had long harbored dreams of a government founded on principles rather than profit. Under his silent guidance, a fragile system was reborn, and it was a system destined to nurture hope even in the bleakest hours. In the enduring memory of the citizens, the courtroom, and the annals of legal history, the story of the day when a judge discovered that the regular lawyer was none other than the state attorney general remains a testament to the truth that justice cannot be contained. It is a luminous reminder that amidst the complexities of power, politics, and paperwork, there lies a profound and unyielding commitment to the ideals that bind a society together. The struggle may be long, and the path fraught with perils unseen, yet in the quiet perseverance of individuals like Marina and Samuel, all those who cherish truth and fairness find reason to believe that the light of justice, though sometimes hidden, always shines through. And so the narrative comes to a gentle close. In every whispered conversation in the corridors of justice, in every resolute step taken by activists in the streets, in every hopeful glance exchanged by citizens inspired by the events of that remarkable trial, there remains an indelible truth, that the law is more than a set of rules, it is the living heartbeat of a community, pulsing with the promise of redemption, renewal, and everlasting hope. May the legacy of that day inspire generations to come, encouraging all who serve and all who stand witness to the enduring fight for honest governance and the triumph of the human spirit. In the end, it became clear to Judge Marina Collins and to everyone who bore witness that when one dares to look beyond appearances, the seemingly ordinary can conceal within it the extraordinary power to reshape a nation. And in that truth, so quietly delivered on a fateful winter's day, the promise of justice in all its brilliant complexity will forever remain as strong and enduring as the principles upon which it was built.